Well, good. This is this has been I mean I've heard some of this, but it's actually really fun
Yeah,
to kind of speak with you chronologically
yeah,
and
yeah. Well, I'm happy
you
to do
know
it. Yeah,
and you're retired now,
yeah,
so it's
yeah.
a and not that you're giving away any trade secrets. I would never
Well,
want anybody to
well, hopefully
you know
not. Yeah, I may have to, I get going and sometimes, so I may have to like look at what you got to make sure that, I didn't say anything
yeah.
as it pertains to, certain things like the air marshal service and whatever that I would get in trouble for.
Well,
I
yeah,
don't think I
I wouldn't
will.
want you in trouble, and also I wouldn't want any, no bad people to figure out how to,
Right, right.
you know.
Yeah, well, they've already figured that out. Just try to sneak an explosive on the airplane.
Yeah, we just don't want any,
We'll just
we don't,
bypass the air marshals altogether. We're not gonna fight these guys.
yeah.
So, uh, yeah,
So what, before we go to your healing journey and some other parts,
yeah.
what was your path to law enforcement? Was it studying with the guys at the self-defense place, meeting all the police, or what was that?
No, I think it really emerged, somewhat, somewhat. Accidentally is not really the word. It really was a product of the environment that I grew up in. And then this is hindsight, looking back many years later. Obviously, if you live your life and you don't study your path, maybe you don't learn anything. I didn't know this at the time, obviously. If I had, I might have chosen differently. Um, I mean, my heroes as kids it was law enforcement people,
Hmm.
and I was the person really that was probably, looking to be rescued by that. Like, I mean, I watched all the cop shows. I mean, whatever. Beretta, Starsky and Hutch, the old days, like Chips, anything that was like, heroes, like Squad
Yeah,
51,
yeah.
emergency
Helping
services.
people.
Yeah, and so that kind of appealed to me. My sister, one of my sisters had married a cop. Her first husband was a police officer, and he kind of, took me under his wing, and I went for rides in the police car and all of that. So he wasn't making it out to be like a shitty job, or it's not a shitty job, but he wasn't, he loved being a cop, and so yeah, I was kind of drawn to it. And so I think, those things kind of, you know, laid that path out for me. In my childhood, I wasn't really in an environment where, like a lot of people are, safety, comfort, you know, you emerge like who you are, emerges in that environment. Yeah, for me, a lot of that stuff didn't start to bubble up until much later in my life. So it was just like, what are you trying to figure out what you want to do,
Mm.
like, with your life? And um, I went to college. I struggled all through high school. Finally realized I had a guidance counselor took me under his wing and said, "Do you want to go to college? Because with your grades, you're not going to college."
Mm.
It's junior year, senior year, I applied myself. The martial arts, helped a lot with that because I started to, have more confidence in myself and um, believe that I could accomplish things. And so I started to study, and I went from a CD student to being a B student, which that would have always been there for me if I'd have applied. So struggled in college. I went into college. I didn't know what the hell I wanted to do. It was like, but I was taking things like I started studying, phys ed, like, so there was this thing, like I was interested in physical fitness.
Mm.
So that was probably the earliest piece, but also constantly talking myself out of it, like, yeah, I don't really know who this person is. Nothing has emerged. And I kept getting drawn back to law enforcement. So I get a job, I worked in security a lot, all through college. I got a job working on an armored car. And then a buddy of mine, again, my martial arts buddy, because we were kind of the same, he wanted to do law enforcement, and He says, hey, Uniform Secret Service is, giving a test, and they're gonna be in town, do you wanna go take the test? And I went, I guess, why not? Sure. So we went and took the test, and I passed, he didn't. And I got a call from Secret Service several months later, and they're like, we'd like to offer you a position with Uniform Division. Some people don't know they have a uniform division. There's uniformed police in Washington DC, at the White House and at the embassies. The embassies is kind of like a patrol section, so like sort of like a real police department, but also protective, primarily a protective operation. And then there's Uniform Secret Service at the White House.
So you were at the White House, Secret Service.
Most of my assignment, I was at the White House. Yeah, I spent a few years standing posts, and then I got interested in. They had an emergency response team. It was like a tactical team. I got interested in doing that because you could get off of post and you could kind of be free to roam around. It's security is pretty boring work, and so.
Can I ask which administration you were there for?
So let's see, I was there for Bush Senior. And then.
Bush
Clinton-
Senior?
Yeah, and then Clinton's for, you know.
One term, two terms,
First, yeah.
First term?
I was only there for 7 years.
7 years.
Yeah. I did.
Pretty exciting.
At times, it was mostly, getting to see history and stuff like that, and like being at the White House and whatever was. You get to see a lot of things that people don't get to see, and yeah, I mean, state visits and like all different kinds of political, things and whatnot, but the job itself was not particularly exciting. No, it was quite boring, actually, most of the time. In security, if it's exciting, it usually means something bad, something bad is happening. So there were definitely times, there were things that happened while I was there that were some excitement, but most of the time it was, come on duty, you're working the North grounds. Go sit in this security post, then go sit in that security post for an hour, then go sit in that security post for an hour. Then go take a little break, do it again. It's time to go home. Doesn't take you too long doing that before you're like, yeah, I can't do this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So.
So that's much different than like the plain clothes that are guarded
Yes,
president.
well, that's, there's Uniform Secret Service, and then there's the special agents of the Secret Service, which are criminal investigators. And they protect the president and dignitaries, but their primary mission is actually treasury. It's actually got to do with currency and that kind of stuff. So investigatively, that's their primary thing, but they're also the agency that protects the president.
Wow.
So that's a different job, but it's also a lot of standing around in hallways and like, a lot of not thrilling, exciting like work. The training and all of that is pretty much so, but the job itself, though may be rewarding, I don't know a lot of Secret Service agents that would say it's exciting all the time. So, yeah.
And I guess you like, as you said, you don't want it to be exciting because that usually means something's happening, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, to an extent, you don't want it to be exciting, but the other piece to that is people that go into, which has always been an interesting thing to me, is people that go into law enforcement a lot of the time are people that want to do something. And so, and this is probably true of like military people, and especially military people that like raise their hand to be in special forces and do that. Like, they want to go do that stuff.
Yeah.
So like they
So to get posted as something where you just stand around is
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, we'd be for a piece of my time there, we'd be on I was at the Foreign Missions Branch, and so it was patrol. You were out in a police car, and I'd be in the car with sometimes a real type A guy. It's like, it's not so boring tonight. Nothing's going on. Like, can't we? I'm waiting. We need a call. We need something. So yeah. So and I would think if you're an inner city cop, It's more excitement, maybe more than you want, because sometimes you're rolling from call to call. Like, New York City, maybe even Minneapolis to a certain extent. Like, there's not a lot of downtime, and so that's different. But if you're like a policeman in the suburbs or something, like your shift, depending on what it is, you run traffic and stuff, it may not be much excitement.
Mm.
And
Is that why you had like a 7 year window, about 7 years you gave it, and you're like, I need a change, or?
I think the 7 year window really for me was partially that, I got bored with it, but I think it was partially also that it was never really the best. It was never really a complete fit for me. It was always, like trying a shirt on and it's like the shirt doesn't feel quite right. Like, there was an element of it that was definitely a part of who I am. And that evolved because of the environment that I grew up in. It just did. And so, um, there was that piece, but that's not really enough to sustain a person throughout their life. And so I was exploring, all at the same time that this was going on, I was exploring massage therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I was exploring like all different kinds of body work. I was drawn to Chinese medicine, things that are like, nobody that I'm working with in my law enforcement environment is even thinking about any of that stuff. I can't even talk to them about it. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you don't know who you are, and that's true. I just really didn't. And so, but I was on a path, right? So I had already started down this path. Well, now I'm at Secret Service and I'm working as a Secret Service person, and I go get a 17-week basic Swedish massage, certificate because I'm interested in it, and I'm getting all kinds of body work done on me. And there's this voice inside of me going, you know what, this element, like this martial thing, this is all part of you. And so I think that, you know, there's an element of that that's within law enforcement. And so it's, serve and protect. And so it's like, yeah, but this isn't really like all who you are. And so that kept emerging. And so I kept looking for something else. It's like, I didn't really like, I was bored standing security posts. So I spent tons of time reading. I started to, a love of reading started to evolve there. I mean, I didn't read, you could probably count how many books I read in high school, including like the books I was supposed to read.
That you
for
had
tests.
to, yes.
And never mind like literature or anything like that. So, I'm staying security post at the White House. You're not supposed to read when you're on duty, but like midnight shift is pretty boring. So I started doing a lot of reading, and then I start discovering that I have an interest in writing, and I start writing things, and I start writing stories and stuff. And it's like, I could get lost in that. And that, of course, again, I didn't have the emotional sophistication at that point in my life to know, this is like you coming out. Pay attention to this. So I just kept putting it away. Like, I can't do this because, like, what am I going to do? I'm going to tell my wife, honey, I know I'm on this law enforcement path, but this doesn't really, that would have been probably the right thing to do, but I didn't. And
I'm quitting and I'm gonna write my novel.
I'm gonna go to massage school. I mean, I did run that one past my first wife.
Yeah.
She went, you what? She's like, hell no. You're not quitting this. Like, you got a good government job. This
Yeah.
is like, you can,
Career path.
yes, like and now you're talking about, you're interested in like yoga and like, what's wrong with
You'll
you?
be meditating now.
And so, yeah, so I didn't have there are people that would have been in that stage in their life that would have had enough comfort in that sense of that I need to pursue this, that may have taken that path and said, well, I'm gonna do it anyway. I didn't have that strength, so I kept going, kept doing the law enforcement path, and then I would look for, okay, I don't want to do Secret Service. This just too boring. Well, let me see if I can become a criminal investigator. And you know, the hell of it is I kept succeeding. You know, that stuff. Like if I hadn't have succeeded, it took me 3 or 4 years to get a job as a criminal investigator, special agent with DEA. I was applying to the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, Customs, everybody that was in, everybody that wasn't in those agencies that was working in law enforcement in the federal government was trying to do that. And so, if that had like run out of steam, who knows what would have happened? Because I don't think I would have stayed with a 25-year career with Secret Service. I don't think I could have weathered that. Working in uniform division, there just wasn't enough to do there. But I get to the last week of training of the Swedish massage class that I'm taking, and not that I would have, but DEA called me and said, we'd like to offer you a commission as a special agent in the Drug Enforcement Administration. Can you start in a month? Can you go to Quantico in a month? And there was no like, should I do this or not? Like, but there was a little voice in my head saying, all right, do you really want to do this? Like, is this what you really want? And it was going just as fast as it came. So I went and became a DEA agent, you know, and started down that path. But still, this other thing was kind of this little, you know, constantly poking me, right? I started taking writing classes at night when I got a DEA assignment a few years in that was, we called them like filler assignments. They assigned me to like a unit that they just wanted to have a DEA agent there present, but we weren't doing much because the cases weren't. They really were putting us there to try to steal cases, like find a case that DEA can take because it's higher than what the locals can do.
Got it.
The locals didn't like that too much. So you weren't really accepted into the group. It was not a great situation. Like I'd go to work and it'd be like nobody would talk to me, you know, because they know that why you're there, really. And so it was basically a 9 to 5 job. And so at night I started taking some writing courses and, you know, started writing a novel. And never finished it. It wasn't that great, but I was working my skill, working on writing skill. And I loved it. Like writing is something that was one of the few things that like I could just lose myself in it. Like, and there wasn't anything else in my life before that. Like I could lose track of time. I'd be writing something and like 2 hours would go by and I've been rewriting and it's like, that's what they call a clue. You're supposed to be an investigator. That's a clue.
Yeah.
That this might be something you should pay attention to.
There's a pattern being formed here, and
so
a serial writer.
Yeah. So DEA, you know, I ended up I've been doing martial arts, so the defensive measure things came up. And I didn't want to be out chasing drug dealers. That's the truth. It wasn't fascinating to me. And so I'm like, oh, let me go do this. I'll see if I can get some mileage out of it. I did that for a while. And it's like, okay, you got to go back to an enforcement group now, and you're going to make cases. And it's like, I'm going to be a shitty DEA agent because it's not my heart ain't in it. 9/11 just happened to happen, and that opportunity came. And now I moved into a supervisory job, but I was doing training, you know, and that was something that was a better fit for me because I like teaching. I liked, you know, that element. I was getting to do some, you know, writing lesson plans and then being in the mat room and being in the simulator and, you know,
Course development, that whole, yeah. Did you ever do any flying any planes to?
Yeah, we were required to. But I mean, as a supervisor, it was mostly like we call check rides. So like you're there just to like make sure that the guys are doing what they're supposed to be doing. Which if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing and your supervisor's sitting there in the airplane, you're probably in the wrong job because you know that they're there. So it was a little silly.
Yep.
But we did have to do some of that. And then some overseas stuff. I flew, but primarily I was there in a supervisor pool. So not a line air marshal, so to speak. We get all the same training and we're expected to be able to execute in the situation, but we weren't there for that purpose. So yeah, that's what kept drawing me back to healing type stuff. And I just kind of kept being interested in reading about different things and such. And then I guess the real moment that changed is the knee injury when I hurt my knee. Because it really undermined my way of life. Like, I mean, martial arts had been like a big deal for me. Like, I've been doing it since I was 15 years old. It was a daily part of my life. Even if I didn't go to the studio or the dojo every day, I was training every day. And so to suddenly have that rug pulled out from under my feet, it was like a big piece of me. I was like, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I gonna do? Because like, I don't want to do, this is what I want to do with my life. And I couldn't. So I'm like, I gotta fix this. I gotta fix myself. I gotta find a way to be able to continue to do this. And so I started, I'm not getting this knee surgery. I want to figure out how do I heal. So I was reading everything I get my hands on. Nutrition, how does that impact you? Movement, somatics, like, I mean, there was a progression over many years, but in the very beginning, it was, how do I heal this? And the two things that came immediately were a friend of mine that was an Aikido training partner of mine, who you met, a guy named Marty Ebelhardt, who I didn't know at that time was a very gifted, talented body worker, healer. And he had just started adding another thing to his regimen, which was a thing called postural therapy through this Agascu method. It was the guy created it back in the 1970s, former military guy that had been shot down in Vietnam in a helicopter and had serious injuries, and basically was told he was going to suffer for the rest of his life just to get used to it. And he figured out that he needed to structurally change his posture and how he was using his body, and that was a big piece of the problem. And so he healed himself. And so that was kind of my first stop on the path right before, it was around the same time as I came to Taiji, but probably had been doing that for 6 months before I came to Taiji, and I was getting benefit. It was helping me. It was like, I had been suffering for many years with chronic shoulder pain, chronic hip pain. And so I've had chronic pain throughout my life. And that's been intermittent. I mean, I've had some little windows. I had a long window from 2005 to about 2012, where I literally lived pain-free. Like, I didn't have any pain in my body at all. And then that changed with some of the things that happened in life and whatever. So that's constantly been something that's been before me. And so, I think I got into it initially was, to try to heal myself.
One thing I'll do is I'll put a link in the description about the Agascu method.
Oh,
and,
sure.
It's been fascinating, the stuff that I read and I've talked to you about, and just, it's probably not as well known as some of the other methods, but so
Yeah.
there'll be a link in
Yeah.
the description.
Yeah. So yeah, the healing thing, and really the healing journey like that, I think for a lot of, it's for a lot of people, as I've seen throughout my life, it's, a lot of people that are involved in healing oriented professions. And I would say most definitely in holistic healing oriented professions, have followed a path like that. They started out like trying to heal something about themselves.
Yeah.
Whatever that might be. But I mean, it really goes back further than that.
Well, in our Taiji lineage, Leon had cirrhosis of the liver, the
Yes.
professor had tuberculosis. I mean,
Yes.
well, and the thing while you were talking about the little voice, and you were able to speak with my classmate Paul Gallagher, late Paul Gallagher.
Yes. I was privileged.
If you had met me in my early 20s, if you didn't do martial arts, I didn't talk to anybody that didn't do martial arts. So on one level, really boring.
Yeah.
Like, that's my whole life. but I always had the spiritual, like, and when I started looking at spiritual books and stuff,
Yeah,
and I would fight that, because I go, well, what has nothing to do with martial, I was all about the training and,
yeah.
but Paul Gallagher said to me, and it went over my head, but he said, oh, well, you have to learn to be a wizard warrior. He
Mhm.
said, you're doing really good on the warrior thing, he goes, but you're not listening to the wizard path. And I'm like, what's the wizard path? And he goes, you got to understand about spirituality, healing. He goes, basically everything that's not martial arts.
Mhm.
And it's one of those things, if you tamp it down,
Yeah, yeah,
it's just gonna come back,
right.
or like you writing and stuff. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
I think that's the real balance.
yeah, it is. It's the internal piece, and so that all. And so it's interesting that my path led there, because the whole time, I'm getting led towards this more internal, um, excuse me, internal path, which is really where you need to go, to heal. And, healing is not, um, even if it's physical, it's not physical, because the mind and the body are all one thing. And so, in the later part, when I started to have a bit more problems, I think you were one of the first people that said to me, it's not your body, it's not the problem. Like it's coming from inside. And, and I was obviously already learning things about that from studying, the Tai Chi, and then, also I've tried to be a good student, so I've read all the books that you tell me to read. I was reading, with Master Gallagher's book. I've read, Master Cohen's books and work. A lot of other stuff out there. And so then hearing those, stories of how, Master, Leong healed himself, and, uh, I mean, even though that may not have, necessarily been fully kind of an emotional thing, it was, because there's emotional stuff.
Yep.
Like, the reason why you do things is coming from that. So.
Well, Master Troy would say, like if you woke up in the morning and your knee hurt, so you woke up in the morning and you go, wow, my knee's hurting.
Yeah,
He would say, unless you can pinpoint it to, oh, right, I bumped it yesterday or I twisted it,
right,
he'd say, forget your body. He'd go, now your next question is ask yourself, what did you eat?
yeah,
And also, or like, did you have a fight with your spouse or whatever? And he would always say, that's what you got to look at. And so sometime when I've had pain,
yeah,
I've looked at it and I went, oh yeah, donuts for lunch, probably not a good choice. And once you're after 20, you got to watch what you eat.
yeah,
And then that emotional thing, oh yeah, that so-and-so pissed me off or whatever.
yeah,
And then you could do all the physical
yeah,
healing
yeah,
and you go, why isn't it getting better? Because
Yeah.
it's not the body.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the weird thing is, I don't know if this is. I'm like everybody here, I'm a mutt, but I have a lot of German in me.
Yeah.
They say Germans are stubborn. I don't know if that's true.
Stoic.
Stoic, stubborn. I don't know if it's a dragon trait, maybe, I don't know. But I'm
Aries.
pretty slow to learn things.
Yeah.
Like, I don't ever give up, I keep at it, but it's like. Sometimes you have to put something in front of me, like a lot of times,
Yeah.
before I actually see it. And it's like, you know. And it ties in with the whole thing of like, whatever you resist persists. So like, if you don't deal with it, it's not going away, right? So I've spent a tremendous amount of time on learning about physiology, kinesiology, how do you, corrective exercises, and, all of that. And all of the time it keeps getting swept into me. Yeah, but your emotions. Yeah, but your emotions. Yeah, but your emotions. My Chinese doctor said, yeah, nutrition's important. The first thing that's most important is your emotional state. You can eat whatever you want. I don't care. If you have an imbalance in your emotional state, that is the thing that's going to cause you the most illness in your life. And I mean, she told me that like years ago, and but that's a harder place to go, I think. It's a harder place to go, and it's harder work to do. And I don't know, like, I can't quote it exactly, but I read Master Leon's book constantly. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've read it, and
Yep.
every time I see something,
It's the study, the
but
workbook.
it's in there, you know, like changing a person's temperament.
Right, to remove a mountain is easy,
Right.
to change a person's temperament, not so, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you can see, you know, you can distill different things from you can distill what you want, and different times in your life, you see different things from stuff like that. So it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, you can, you know, to change your body or to learn the physical techniques. It's not easy, but compared to embodying it in your life, it's easy. Like, it's much easier to learn, like, you know, grasp a sparrow's tail with your body, but how do you learn, like, you know, to incorporate the fluidity of the form in your life, in your being, and how you carry yourself through life, and how you interact with your wife, with your friends, with um, other human beings. Do you interact with other human beings, or do you isolate yourself? That's been a challenge for me. It's like, you know, that's not good for you. There's science that shows this, like, you know, social contact. Well, you know, you don't trust human beings because of how you know, but you got to work with that. Like, you got to work with that, or you can't get by it. It's not like, so from a standpoint, a martial arts standpoint, it's like you're constantly at battle with things. Like, forget about like who's gonna ever, you know, try to like hurt you physically. Like, most of us are gonna go through our whole life, unless you're an MMA fighter, or unless you know, you spar in the dojo, or, you know, you do push hands and Sancho, I mean, cooperatives, working out kind of thing. And most of us are gonna go our whole life, and we're never gonna get like,
Physically
nobody's ever gonna pull a
challenged.
knife on you.
Nope.
Nobody's ever gonna try to
No
kill you.
ninja's gonna jump out of the bush or,
But
no.
you're in battle all day long, every single day of your life. Reality is
You're
that,
under attack all the time.
yeah,
Self-defense, you have to defend your mind, your spirit.
yeah,
I mean, it's, you know, allergies. I mean, there's so many things that attack you, and then how do you deal with it?
right. And to think, you know, like when I was younger, of course, when you're young, hopefully that's the wisdom piece, right? As you get older, you hopefully are learning from all this stuff, but you go back and you go, this could have saved me a lot of pain. A lot of, like, if I could have just like known, like, you know, you're 20 years old, it's like, I want to learn to fight like Chuck Norris, like, because I want to be able to like beat the bad guys up. It's like, you're never going to see no bad guys, most likely. I mean, that's not true. I mean, if you're in the military and you're having to whatever, and you're law enforcement, yes, but I lived a 30-year law enforcement career, and I can probably, I mean, I can count on, definitely on two hands, like how many times I've, you know, had hands-on to a situation where it wasn't cooperative. And then, you know, never a lethal force situation. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be prepared for
Right.
those things. I mean, that's part of what martial arts is. It's to you know, prepare you for any eventuality. Like, but the application of it is really more like, hey, you know what, if you can fight your way out of a bar, great. But if you can't like get along with your wife, if you can't like, if, you know, if you can't be relaxed in your body, if you can, who cares? Because that's meaningless unless you're going down to the bar every night and getting in a fight. You got no use for it. So that's a little bit of a tangent too, but the healing thing is probably more. I mean, my focus with Tai Chi has been a lot on that, has been on the healing aspects of it, and the study of the movements, and like, how does that feel in your body, and using the movements to, you know, to try to calm like emotional things. And nervous system things, those have kind of developed in my life later. Tension in the body from holding in the emotional system, and you know, uh, Tai Chi can help that, but other things have to also be happening.
Yeah.
And so it's a blessing in that way to have a practice where you can start to embody that, like you can recognize, just recognizing that you're tense is something that Tai Chi gives you. Like most people don't even know that how much tension that they have, but if you've practiced Tai Chi long enough, that's one of the things that probably is the first thing that I started to notice was, oof, I've never been that relaxed in my life. And until you know what it feels like to experience deep relaxation, you don't really know that you're not relaxed.
And this myth that if you're relaxed and soft, you're weak.
Yes.
I mean, some of my most powerful martial arts teachers, no one ever would say that they were weak or whatever.
Yeah.
You touch them, they're soft.
Right.
You know why? Because the power's not coming out.
No. Right.
You get the most powerful, like, elephant rifle. If it's not going off, you'd go, well, that thing's not effective. Well, when it goes off, it's super effective.
Right.
And like to actually physically touch these people that when I have been on the receiving end of their power, I'm like, whoa.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When they're not using it, they're conserving it.
Right.
And that's what tension is basically. It's be like at the red light and you still get your foot on the gas pedal a little bit.
Yeah.
Or you're just wasting gas. These guys.
Yeah, and wasting your life's gas, so your
Exactly.
energy, how much energy you have to sustain your life for a long period of time. So you're, so yeah, the martial aspect of it, has, been secondary for me, really. We haven't, during my time with you and time in Tai Chi, I haven't, really explored that much. And so maybe that's coming for me. I hope that's coming for me. I'm turning 60, but 60 is not that old. So
No, not at all.
So that's coming, but having the ability to be, well, yeah, I mean, if you're carrying a lot of tension and you're having, that's going to impact your ability to apply this in practice. But yes, it does change your body too. So that's the other piece. That's something that I've noticed even without pushing. So like, obviously, you're my teacher, but also my friend. And so we've, pat each other on the shoulder and sometimes, so it's funny because you don't actually have to have a teacher try to like push you over to actually, we're a highly skilled person. Like if you're sensitive to the energy, it's like, you know what, like sometimes you can put your hand on a person and like they might be strong, but they're tense, so they're stiff, and so like they're actually easy to move, sort of like. But like if you like put your hand on you and you like just, hey, how's it going? Like there's substance there. It's like you're soft, but it's like it's also like you're also like putting your hand on a wall, and like you can feel it, the difference between somebody who's relaxed and just balanced and centered and like they're just, I don't know, it's like it's like they're full all the way from their bones to their skin with essence, like, and it's not muscle, it's not like, I mean, but you learn the Tai Chi, you learn that, like you feel it in your body, you start to feel it in other people's bodies. And then I think it also informs how you interact with people. Because like, do you make people tense or do you make them relaxed? Like when you're in their presence, like that's we could probably go off on all kinds of tangents, but that's another piece. It's like you learn that is like, I've been around lots of different kinds of martial arts personalities in my life, and um, sometimes they're, it's not settling to you. It's like combative.
Yeah.
Like I'm about fighting in combat.
Yeah.
But not having the other side of that. And so, talking to like somebody who has the inner peace, the inner softness, but also has the other, it puts you at ease. Like, so what's more important is like you're in the presence of somebody, and I've heard this said really about by other people, a lot of times, is when you're in the presence of somebody that's a master of an art and has mastered the internal, even if it's an external art, because
Mhm.
there's internal.
Oh, yeah, they're
If
definitely.
if they've mastered the internal, you want to be around them, because they actually make you feel good, like relaxed, welcome, comforted. Even if you're talking about, even if you're talking about how to, like, what to
Hurt somebody, exactly.
it's not, you still just feel comfortable and relaxed and welcome.
Yeah.
And like, there's no threat from this person. Whereas there's that tension piece, because tension makes you feel uneasy, it makes you feel threatened.
Yeah.
And so like when you're in the presence of someone who's tense, and they might be a perfectly nice person, they're not tense on purpose, they're not violent, but they're also not relaxed. And that tension actually bubbles, and you can feel it, it makes you more tense.
Yeah.
And that's not good for your health either. So there's the other piece, another piece to it, is like if you practice this and it makes you calm and it makes you at peace and it makes you soft, then the people that you affect you.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's absolutely true. I mean, and like,
It's like you're healing, you're helping provide healing to them by just your presence.
I mean, that's one of the pieces in the druid work that I do, is that, um, I if I say it wrong and it sounds arrogant, I don't mean it this way. The idea is develop yourself so that you are the medicine.
Yeah,
It's just
right.
hang out with me. Let's
Yeah, that makes sense.
just, it's just that, at the very least, I'm not going to burden you.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to add any stress to your life. And those people that you're healed by their presence.
Yes. Yeah.
I heard a really interesting thing, and I'll try and hunt down this book, but there's a book talking about the difference between healing and curing. And that healing is, if you go to a healer, healing is it's a partnership.
Yeah.
The healer is actually helping you to get out of your own way so you can heal you.
Right.
Whereas curing is you want someone from the outside, just do it, just give me the cure. And that sometimes the cure doesn't work, but the healing almost always does work.
Yeah.
The partnership.
Yeah.
Hey, I still got a couple more questions for you.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this has been great. We will be here all day.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna say now, I'm really feeling part two is gonna.
Oh, okay.
So now that I've given myself the out and it's part two, I won't ask you my two difficult questions. I just want to ask you one more question, and that is, I'd like to hear your opinion on teaching and learning with Zoom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be a whole series on its own, but well, let me take that this way. So I'm not a huge technology person, but that could be said of anybody that's in our age group. We grew up in a time before all of that, and so I have the awareness of all of the things about it that are not so good for us. And so like technology in general, I think is not always not really in our best interest. And but I'm not going to go down that path. It's here, it's something that we are all working with, and kind of not really left much of a choice but to do that. So how do you make it work? and how do you use it for positive things. Teaching, so the first learning that I've, other than taking like a class that's like an online class that is just academic, which, I mean, I still think there's benefit to being in a classroom with other students, even in an academic situation. But you can learn things. I mean, if the teacher's teaching you and talking to you, who cares? You're learning. I was really kind of skeptical about it at first in terms of learning as a student, and then but one thing that was right off the bat good is for many years I've not come to the studio on a regular basis. Life, whatever, got to a point where I wasn't really coming to the studio. I did a lot of some private with you for a while, and I hadn't been exposed to it in a while. And so when you started teaching a class on Zoom, well, two things. First thing was I said, well, if he's doing it, like, because like I know, like, he's embracing it, and it's like, it's probably going to be okay.
I am kind of a traditionalist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he would rather be in the studio, but he's embracing it because obviously he sees that there's a value in it, and that there's a way to do it. And if there is a way to do it, he'll figure it out, and it'll be good. And so yeah, as soon as you started doing the online class, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. I'll do it. And I got on there, and obviously anything, it's new to you, and if you're like not a tech guru, and it takes time to figure it out. You figured it out pretty fast. But I started doing the class, and I'm like, hey, this is not so bad. Like, I can, I already have learned what we're doing, so that piece made it easier. I'm not 100% on how that is for a new student, although I'll talk about that as in teaching the second phase, because I have gotten feedback on that from people who have never done Tai Chi before. So in reviewing what we have, what we've learned, the solo form, I know the movement, so I don't have to see the direction necessarily. I can pay attention to what you're doing, listen to what you're saying. You're doing more cueing than you would do in a class because you've figured out know how to do this online now. And so there's that benefit. The benefit also of that is we're getting to experience more than we might in a class with you, because you're talking more. And so you're passing along knowledge and information that we don't always, or didn't always get in a class. Like we would do the blackboard, and on the blackboard part of the class, we get a lot, and we take notes, and then you get, not just the how to, but the other stuff. Sometimes it's the stories, right?
Yeah.
And that's not just stories, that's learning. There's information there that you can learn from. And so we get some more of that. So from a student standpoint, I think that it's beneficial. I was a little bit not sure of how that would be like when I first started doing some teaching with it. And some of that was probably my own concern about like my skill, what I have the skill to be able to do it. And then also like, can I convey it in that type of a setting? Teaching, it just, it's you have to be more, you have to be very verbal, so you have to be talking, and so that I think it's a little more work for the teacher in some way, at least. Yeah, it's a little more work for the teacher, because I can't just demonstrate it. I have to be constantly stepping, this is, okay, so transfer your weight to the right foot on count 1, start to turn to your right. You got to really, it's making you connect a different part, because you're connecting cognitively to your body.
Yeah.
And so there's a value for the student, but there's also a value for the teacher, because it's kind of forcing you to study your movement more deeply than you might. If you're, well, you definitely are studying your own movement more deeply while you're teaching that way than you would be in a class where you're just demonstrating, because you could just do the form and your students will follow you. So teaching, yeah, it's
Yeah,
It's
you have
hard.
to,
it's hard.
yeah, you have to have your descriptions down, and every once in a while, what happens is I will confuse my right with my left, just verbally.
Yeah.
And I'll say it, and it's like, I gotta keep reminding everybody, hey, I'm messing it all up, you know?
And then you can't like, you can't really, see your students that well. I mean, you can see them a little bit in the,
Yeah,
but like, and some of, and then there's a piece of that whole piece of that I've learned is, okay, one of the things is tell them, like, if you want me to see you, like, I have to be able to see you. And I don't mean that like, well, don't turn your camera off, because some people just, they don't want to have their camera on.
Right.
And and sometimes it's the matter of like, sometimes I can't do the whole class, or I'm monitoring, I might just turn the camera, I might screen record it and then do the class later. So I don't mean that, like, like, you can't see you, I mean, like, if you like are doing it from your desktop and like, all I can see is you from here up.
Yeah.
Like, that's only a quarter of what I need to be able to see.
Yep.
And most of it's, I'm not gonna give you like a lot of corrections anyway. It's mostly just like the major things that you see that people do wrong, like stepping too wide, or, you can sometimes see that they're, tense, their shoulders are up.
Yep.
Just like the chunks.
Yeah, no, some people it's just like a bobbing head, and you know how.
Not fine tuning, and like, even if I can see them all the way to their feet, they're this big.
Yeah.
So like, if it's one-on-one, it's different, right? Because you get the whole full screen. So
Right,
like
but not-
a private lesson.
Yeah.
Or something like that, you could do more effectively with like helping corrections and stuff. But as far as demonstrating and getting the main chunks of it, so far I found that it works, and I haven't done a ton of it, but I've done a few classes, and I've had, the students that took the class said, yeah, it's, I feel like I'm getting it. And then I also did some video, so that helps.
Yep.
So, because you do a lot of video.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, so that's another piece of the technology that's good. It's like, okay, I can now go to the video and I can study the video. And so, and I can rewind it and I can do it again and I can rewind it and okay, I didn't hear what he said there. Like, okay, now I got. And you didn't used to be able to do that, right? So like, we'd come to class and everybody would have like a notebook or like their little note cards. And so like, like when you were practicing, you couldn't like you couldn't jot anything down. You go to the blackboard, or like during breaks, you'd run over and you'd quickly try to jot some stuff down, like, shit, I'm gonna forget this. And then you write it down and go, I forgot that. I forgot what he said. And I want to ask him again, but I don't want to feel like a moron because I've already like, so, so the video's there for that, or, in class too, you can like, there's a little break in the action, so like you can pick up your notebook and write down something, but it's also there for you in a video form. So that feedback I've gotten from the little bit that I've done with the beginning class that I told you that I taught. With the video, and some of the students were like, the video is great, like, we come back, we can look at the video. And then I also get some feedback from them, which is good, like, because some of them are like more tech savvy than me, so it's like, could you do this, because this would help. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can do that, like, I can change it up a little bit, like.
I loved it when last night somebody said, well, can you just like put like some tape and make some lines? I'm like going, well, there's the carpet down there. I don't think my girlfriend's gonna like that. I could just paint it, you know?
Right, yeah, to make it, yeah, so you know what direction.
Exactly,
you're going.
but, you know.
But, yeah. But you can ask, if you're new, that's gonna be harder.
Yeah.
Like, if you're brand new, it's gonna be harder because you don't really see the directionality as much in the video. Like, you can see if it's like the cardinal directions usually.
But the corners, you don't, it's not deep enough to get a dimension.
No, it's
Yeah.
not deep enough to get a dimension. And then, you know, also, teaching and learning, like, I gotta stay in the screen.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So that can be hard because, like, if you're just teaching a posture, no problem. But if you're teaching the sequence of postures, like, you're not gonna do the whole form unless you get the right equipment.
Yep.
Like a wide angle, like, so if you're doing 4 movements or 5 movements and you're taking some steps with it, I've been, and I look over and I'm not completely in the screen.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta do the empty step or the jailhouse step, and then, or I just have to step so small that, like, it's because you don't want to screw them up either, because the jailhouse step is a different step.
Yep.
And so, like, you're telling them to do one thing, you gotta do that, and you can't do the different step.
Because they'll see it when you do that.
Right.
The one time you make an adjustment, they'll go, am I supposed to short
my
step
left
that?
Yeah, am I supposed to take a step with my left foot forward, or am I supposed to step back with my right foot? Well, I'm just trying to stay in the screen so you can see, but yeah, you're supposed to step forward with your left foot. So, all in all, I think it's a good tool. I think it really does have to be used in conjunction with some in-person study. Both ways, even if you're a beginner or if you're not a beginner, I still think that there's benefit, that you can't get from that. Certainly anything that's hands-on, you can't get.
Right.
And then you also can't, yeah, there's something to being adjusted, like, to,
Oh, yeah.
like, your hands too high, lower it. Or left, a little right. It's much easier if the teacher can just come and go.
Yep.
Right here, right here, right here, stay there. That's where it needs to be. And then, okay, that's where it needs to be. But then, I mean, I'm sure you would say, well, I did that a million times in class, and I still would have students.
Yep.
That after I've told them like half a dozen times that that's the wrong place for your hand, it still goes there. So maybe it's just part of it, like, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's just, you've heard my take that it's a piece of the puzzle. I'm definitely gonna have you do a second part, because we're gonna talk about you in Bayfield and doing the.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the part is that, now you live very far away,
Yes,
and yet we can Zoom.
yeah,
Or like I have students from Massachusetts or Delaware or whatever.
Yeah.
They're on the Zoom, and it's some nights it's really kind of crazy, when someone goes, "Can I ask a question?" And you're like, "That they're in Western Massachusetts," and
yeah.
it's just kind of beautiful.
Yeah, because you can reach more people with it.
Yep.
Like, that's, I've, so, yeah, that'll be for segment 2, but yeah, I'm teaching the class at the retreat center to new people that are there on retreat, and I've, got some people that are like, there's no teacher where I live. And so, like, I'm working on another class now, and it's like, it's gonna be online, and I live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Well, there's no Tai Chi teacher there. I can.
You got Wi-Fi?
I can take your class. Yeah, I live in wherever. I can take your class, and if you're within like a tri-state area, or if you're in this region, then it's pretty easily doable to do like a workshop.
Yeah.
Or like, you can come to like come for a private lesson, or come for a weekend and do a couple of in-person classes or lessons. So it's reachable, and even if you live somewhere else, it is, as long as you're willing to
Yep.
drive or get on an airplane and go there, then you can go get some in-person with the teacher, and they can help fine tune it, so you can actually learn it from a distance. But that's also a piece, I get a lot of those kind of questions is like, can you recommend like a good, like, video or like on YouTube or,
Mhm.
and it's like, I mean, I can direct you to specific things, but like. That's, so there's that other wormhole to this is like, you go on YouTube and Google and put Tai Chi in. And how many thousands of videos are gonna pop up? Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. And you don't know which is, if you've not been around it long enough, you don't really know whether it's any good or not, and it may not be good teaching. I mean, it may not that it's a bad teacher, but it's not designed to teach you how to do it.
The other thing people don't realize is, if you're a visual learner, yeah, YouTube is your,
Yeah,
there are still enough people that, learning movement,
yes,
there are people that can stand there and not do anything and watch you do it, and then they can do it. They're a complete visual learner.
yeah, right,
There are other people, they're like watching and doing it, and there's so many different learning styles, and that,
Mhm.
YouTube and video is definitely, here we go, here is a 90% visual, 10% audio,
Right. Yeah,
whereas when you're in class, I mean,
yeah,
you know, even the secret, which is you light incense, because the people that are smellers,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, oh, I didn't think about that,
yeah. Or
yeah,
Master Liang, I always had the goldfish bowl full of butterscotch candy.
uh-huh,
So to this day, if I ever get one of those butterscotch candy, I put it in my mouth immediately, like I'm in class.
uh-huh.
It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
that, you know.
yeah, yeah, I mean, there's no substitute for in-person anything really. Um, I, but this is also generational too,
Yeah.
because you've got now generations of people that have know nothing but this,
Yeah.
really. And so they actually probably can pick some stuff up more than somebody who is older. Because they learned that from they've known from the time they've been looking at it that it's two-dimensional, that it's one-dimensional. But they're moving around and it's like, I don't know, that would be an interesting research project. It's like,
You know,
if you're
we
20 years old and you teach a bunch of 20-year-olds Tai Chi on,
oh
on
yeah,
here, and you teach a bunch of 50-year-olds for the first time on here.
to see who
Are the
yeah.
20-year-olds gonna pick it up and be better at it than, understanding it, then. And so is the medium, have the people changed enough that the medium is now,
I heard a musician tell me that a lot of people are learning, like, say, guitar online,
uh,
and they don't have to wait for the 20-minute class once a week to go to the guitar teacher.
right.
They can go on YouTube, they can learn all the
Mhm.
cheats, the hacks, all the training tips and stuff,
Yeah,
and then when they come to class, they're playing the guitar great. So I mean, that would be an interesting experiment.
yeah,
But I tell you what, I really like, there's just so much more I want to dive
yeah,
into. So,
yeah,
and I'm even gonna break this into two parts,
yeah,
because it's just so good.
it's a lot.
But I'd really like to thank you for doing
Okay,
this,
I
and I
appreciate
want you to promise me you'll come back for
I will,
round two.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And thanks for sharing it all. And I hope this has been as exciting for you as it is for me. I just I love learning from people like Marty, and listening to the story and the parts that are the same, and then of course the parts that are different, and it's all part of the journey. So
Well, thanks a
thank
lot,
you.
I enjoyed this, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah.